He never said introverts are shy. He said something much stranger. You're at a party. Someone you barely know walks up and says, "So, how about this weather, huh?" And something in you just shuts down. Not because you're rude, not because you're shy, not because something is wrong with you. Carl Jung, the man who literally invented the words introvert and extrovert back in 1921, spent his entire career trying to explain exactly what's happening in your brain in that moment. And it's not what you think. Because here's the twist. Jung never said introverts are shy. He never said you're afraid of people. What he said is far stranger, far more specific, and by the end of this video, you're going to understand something about your own mind that almost nobody, including most psychology content online, actually gets right. Stay until the end, because the last part of this video explains something Jung called psychic energy. And once you understand it, you will never look at SmallTalk, or yourself, the same way again. Let's get into it. Section 1. What Jung actually meant. In 1921, a Swiss psychiatrist named Carl Jung published a book called Psychological Types. Before this book, nobody in psychology used the words introvert and extrovert the way we use them today. Jung created these terms from scratch. But here's what almost everyone gets wrong about him. Jung was not describing whether you like parties. He was not describing whether you're outgoing or quiet. He was describing something much deeper, the basic direction that a person's psychic energy flows. That's the actual term Jung used. Psychic energy, not social energy, not confidence. Energy, as in where your mental and emotional resources are naturally pulled toward. According to Jung, an extrovert's energy flows outward, toward people, objects, external activity, the world outside their own head. An introvert's energy flows inward, toward ideas, reflection, internal thought, the world inside their own head. This is not a preference. This is not a personality quirk. Jung framed it as a fundamental orientation of the psyche itself, something closer to how your mind is wired to direct its attention, not a lifestyle choice you made. And this is where SmallTalk comes in. Section 2. Why SmallTalk specifically drains. SmallTalk is, by definition, external. It's surface-level exchange, directed outward, with no real depth, no real idea being explored, no internal reflection involved. If your energy is naturally oriented inward, the way Jung described introversion, then SmallTalk isn't just boring to you. It's working against the direction your mind naturally wants to move in. You're spending energy pushing your attention outward into a conversation that has no depth to pull you in. That's the actual mechanism. It's not that you dislike people. It's not that you're antisocial. It's that SmallTalk asks you to operate in the direction opposite to where your energy naturally flows. And that costs you something. This is why you can talk for 2 hours about a topic you genuinely care about and feel energized afterward. But 5 minutes of "how about this weather" leaves you completely drained. Same amount of talking, completely different direction of energy. Think about how many everyday moments are actually built around this exact pattern without anyone realizing it. Being cold called on in class and expected to think out loud in front of 30 people. A team icebreaker where everyone has to introduce themselves with a fun fact, on the spot with zero time to prepare. Standing in a group at a wedding, expected to keep a light conversation going with people you've just met. None of these moments were designed with inward-flowing energy in mind. So if situations like these have always felt disproportionately exhausting to you compared to how small they seem to everyone else, that's not you being overly sensitive. It's your energy running in the opposite direction the moment demands. Section 3. The biggest misconception. Now here's where we need to correct something, because this gets confused constantly online. Introversion is not social anxiety. Introversion is not shyness. Introversion is not fear of people. Social anxiety is a fear-based response, a nervous system reaction to the possibility of judgment or embarrassment. Introverts, by Jung's original definition, are not afraid of social interaction. Many introverts genuinely enjoy people. They can be warm, engaged, even charismatic in the right setting. The difference is what happens afterward. An introvert can enjoy a conversation and still need to recover from it. Not because it was bad, but because outward directed energy has to be replenished by turning back inward. Solitude for an introvert isn't avoidance, it's recharging. This is also why calling someone an introvert as if it's one fixed box is misleading. Jung himself was clear that nobody is a pure type. Most people sit somewhere on a spectrum, leaning one direction more than the other, and that lean can even shift depending on context, mood, and life stage. So if you hate small talk but love deep one-on-one conversations, that's not a contradiction. That's exactly what Jung's model would predict. Section 3.5. The real reason Jung invented this theory. Here's something almost nobody mentions when they talk about introverts and extroverts. The actual reason Jung came up with this theory in the first place. And it's a much better story than you'd expect. Before Jung published Psychological Types in 1921, he spent years watching two of the most brilliant minds in psychology completely disagree with each other. Sigmund Freud, Jung's early mentor, believed human behavior was driven by energy directed outward, toward people, toward objects, toward the external world. Alfred Adler, another major thinker of the time, believed behavior was driven by something almost the opposite, an inward struggle with feelings of inferiority and the drive to compensate for them from within. Freud and Adler weren't just disagreeing on small details. They were describing what looked like two completely different versions of the human mind. And Jung's breakthrough insight was this. What if they weren't actually wrong about the facts? What if they were each looking at the same reality through a different psychological lens? Jung eventually concluded that Freud's theory was, structurally, an extroverted one, built around energy directed at the outside world. And Adler's theory was structurally introverted, built around the internal world of the self. Two brilliant psychologists looking at the exact same human behavior, each one unconsciously building a theory that matched their own type. That's the real origin of introvert and extrovert. It wasn't a personality quiz. It wasn't a way to sort people into boxes at a party. It came from Jung trying to explain why two geniuses could look at the same evidence and walk away with completely opposite conclusions. And here's the detail that gets left out of almost every online summary of this theory. Jung himself insisted that no one is purely one type or the other. Everyone carries some capacity for both directions of energy. One side simply tends to dominate, while the other stays in the background, still present, just less developed. Modern personality research has actually backed this up. One well-known estimate suggests roughly 90% of people sit somewhere in the middle of the introvert-extrovert spectrum, rather than at either extreme. There is no clean line where introversion ends and extroversion begins. Most of us fall into what researchers now call ambiversion, carrying real elements of both. So if you've ever felt like neither label fully fits you, if you can dominate a room one day and dread a 5-minute conversation the next, that's not you being inconsistent. That's statistically the most common experience there is. But introversion and extroversion were never the whole picture. Even in Jung's original theory, Jung was building towards something bigger. And this next part is the piece almost nobody online actually explains correctly. Section 4. It's not just one dial, it's a whole system. Here's the part almost nobody talks about because it's the part that actually made Jung's work so influential. Jung didn't just propose introversion and extroversion. He paired that direction of energy with 4 core mental functions: thinking, feeling, sensation, and intuition. Thinking and feeling are what Jung called judging functions, how you evaluate and decide. Sensation and intuition are perceiving functions, how you take in information in the first place. Every person, according to Jung, has a dominant function, filtered through either an introverted or extroverted attitude. That combination is what actually shapes how a specific person experiences the world. Not just, am I an introvert, but introverted combined with which function. This is also, by the way, the actual origin of the personality test you've probably heard of, the Myers-Briggs type indicator. It was built directly on top of Jung's original framework, though it simplified his ideas significantly. Jung's original system required deep clinical observation to determine someone's type. The modern test reduces it to a questionnaire, useful as a starting point, but not the same depth as what Jung was actually describing. Here's what that actually looks like in real life. Someone who's introverted with a dominant thinking function tends to want to work through a problem alone first, in silence, before they say a single word about it out loud. And they'll often stay quiet in a meeting, not because they have nothing to say, but because they're still processing internally. Someone who's extroverted with a dominant feeling function does almost the opposite. They think out loud, they process by talking, and a group brainstorm actually helps them arrive at clarity rather than draining them. Same species, same basic intelligence, completely different operating systems. And notice, neither one is broken. They're just running on a different combination of direction and function. This is also why two introverts can feel completely different from each other. An introvert with a dominant thinking function and an introvert with a dominant intuition function are both technically introverted, but one is quietly analyzing logical structure, while the other is quietly chasing patterns and possibilities. Lump them into one box labeled introvert, and you lose almost everything that actually makes each of them who they are. So when you hate small talk, it's not just introversion in some generic sense. It's your entire cognitive structure, how you perceive, how you judge, and which direction your energy flows, all working together to make surface-level interaction feel like static instead of signal. Section 5. Why this actually matters. Here's why understanding this isn't just interesting trivia. It changes how you treat yourself. If you've spent years thinking something is wrong with you because you avoid parties, dread networking events, or feel completely empty after a day of forced socializing, Jung's framework reframes that entirely. You're not broken. You're not antisocial. Your energy simply moves in a different direction than the world's default expectation, because most modern social environments, from open plan offices to networking events, are built by and for extroverted energy flow. That mismatch isn't a personal failure, it's an environmental one. It's also worth knowing that Jung's model isn't the final word. Psychology has moved forward since 1921. The most widely used framework in academic personality research today, called the Big Five, treats extroversion as a sliding scale rather than two separate boxes. And some researchers have even connected it to differences in how the brain responds to reward and stimulation. But here's the thing, even 100 years in an entire field of research later, that basic insight Jung had first, that people differ in which direction their energy naturally flows, is still the foundation almost every modern personality model is built on. He didn't get every detail right. He got the core idea right before almost anyone else did. And once you know that, you can stop forcing yourself into extroverted formats and start designing your environment around how your energy actually works. Fewer surface-level interactions, more deep one-on-one conversation, built-in recovery time after socializing, and permission to leave a party early without feeling guilty about it. Jung wasn't handing you an excuse to avoid people. He was handing you a map of how your own mind actually operates, so you stop fighting it and start working with it. No fluff, direct. So the next time someone corners you with, "How about this weather, huh?" and you feel that instant urge to disappear, that's not a flaw. That's a 100-year-old psychological pattern that Carl Jung identified before anyone else even had the language for it. You're not bad at socializing. You're just wired to run on a different current. If this actually made sense of something about yourself, subscribe, because this channel breaks down real psychology like this every week. No fluff, no fake facts, just the actual research explained in plain language. Deep thinking starts here.